Do life's greatest questions seem like a mystery? Well, we're probably going to talk about it here at Appalachian Liturgy. Important questions like, are you a Jedi or an Imperial? Is oatmeal actually a breakfast cereal? Is a Catholic weekday really called a ferial? Did you know that Mr. Rogers was Presbyterial? So join us as we have a little fun talking about thy kingdom come. Appalachian Liturgy.
Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of the Appalachian Liturgy podcast. I am Justin Stacy.
I'm Brooke Atchley.
I'm Aaron Atchley.
And I'm Justin Bowling.
Welcome back, Aaron. 2 weeks in a row. I think you're a regular at this point. You're required to come back. It's in some kind of contract or something.
I understand I have to speak this time, so.
Yeah, you have to speak this time. So welcome. So this week we were tossing around ideas to see what we wanted to kind of touch on, and we've been noticing in the headlines that Jerry Falwell Jr. is very popular again. So we thought we would talk about him and then lead us into somewhat of a message from Aaron on the deadliness of hypocrisy, because that's completely related. So, yeah, let's jump into I guess some Jerry Falwell Jr. news.
You want to give a summary of why
Sure.
that might be related?
So the latest scandal in the world of Jerry Falwell Jr. is that he took a photo of himself. What was amazing to me is it was his photo, and he's the one shared it. Like, if it was just some random person that shared it, then I was like, well, that was just a flub up. But he's the one did it, so he was proud of this, you know. And so he shared with a very young woman, and she's pregnant apparently. And their pants were unzipped and their belly buttons were showing. Okay. It's definitely, like, it wasn't the most scandalous thing I've ever seen in my life.
Well,
Like,
and he's holding.
It's weird.
It's weird.
it's weird.
And he's holding a glass with, that is alluding to liquor.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
in his caption, he makes sure to say that it's not really liquor. And I was
Yeah.
like, but you're
That
saying
was not my number one concern in that photo.
Right.
No. I am so concerned that this guy's drinking, you know.
and the lady's not his wife.
Yeah.
And they're in a bedroom.
And they're in a bedroom. I mean, it was so insane. But,
I would
you know,
be concerned if it was his wife.
So he was like cosplaying as, is it Jeff Lowe from Tiger King? Is that who he was dressed up as? I thought. Was
He
it not?
at
Or did
a-
I have
just
no idea.
think it was so crazy that I saw
Party.
Tiger King when I saw the picture or something, but that's who I thought he
No.
was.
He was at a party that everybody at the party was dressed up like they were white trash.
I went to that party.
Okay. So
Oh,
it was somewhat of a cosplay. They were acting white trash redneck type thing.
Yes.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. I
Does it
suppose.
though?
For me, it makes it even scarier. Like, thinking about, so what they were really doing is they were having a party trying to pretend on their multi-million-dollar yacht,
Mhm.
trying to pretend to be people that they think live in our area.
Yeah, I mean, they were essentially making fun of lower class people, poor people. But I don't know. Like you said, it's really weird. So this obviously isn't the first scandal that he's been in the news for. He's had, some sexist comments. He's had, I think he suggested that all these students of Liberty University should get an open carry permit to take out Muslims so that they can get rid of the terrorist problem. Then
I hadn't heard that one. That's crazy.
really, yeah. So I looked a lot of this stuff up beforehand, and that was one of the things. That was back in like 2015 or something that he said that. He also, I think he had some racist comment. He was making fun of Governor Ralph Northam back in May, and he tweeted out a photo of a mask because he was. I assume he was making fun of people who wear masks too, but it had the photo of Governor of Northam with from high school, college, whenever it was, when he
Oh, I
did
remember that.
blackface. Yeah.
Mhm.
So he
That's
put that
weird.
on a mask and was basically saying, people in Virginia should maybe wear this to support Ralph Northam. And it was so horrible to do something like that.
Well,
But
I think for me this is the whole, can he do it? Sure. I mean, he has the freedom to do that. Should he do it? Not with him calling out what he can, the sins that he wants to call out in other people. To me, it was very cherry picking. I mean,
that's the hypocrisy. That's the hypocrisy on his part, because
those of us in leadership have to be wise in what we do and what we say and what we post.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't.
And I think it screams of hypocrisy more so than anything because of like the extremely strict rules that Liberty has for students on campus. And like, okay, if you want to make an argument about that, that's one thing. But if you want to make an argument about that and then live in a totally different way, like I think that's what kind of just shuts down any conversation immediately. There's nowhere you can go.
Let's just go back to the fact that he felt that the picture was a little risque enough that he needed to clarify what was in the glass.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so somewhere in his brain, he knew that this was a little maybe iffy,
Yeah.
But
my assumption is he was impaired, or he wouldn't have posted that picture.
Oh, he was absolutely impaired. The day after, the morning after, he calls into some radio show to defend himself, and he is slurring his words. He was absolutely hungover, and so he was drunk when he took it. So that explains probably why it happened. But he clearly is not leading a public lifestyle that a leader a Christian leader should be leading. And Liberty, up to this point, has ignored it. And I think that's the bigger hypocrisy here.
Well, it took about a week, but he took a indefinite leave of absence by request of the board.
Yes, he did.
Took a week. It's a long time.
Exactly. And, it makes me wonder, why was this the breaking point? Like, since they've had former staff and former students from there to speak out openly against Falwell Jr. and really Liberty itself, that how it's somewhat of a tyrant type of environment, and they filter everything. They have their school newspapers, but all of that has to go up to Falwell's office so that he can approve it before he will allow anything to be, openly done in the newspaper. So that is just some crazy level of surveillance, and I guess filtering open opinions, making sure. And so I don't know.
His actions, and I have this issue. Anytime you have a Christian leader who falls into some kind of legal trouble or moral or ethical trouble, there's a lot that is made of that, because we expect people who preach the word to live by the word, whether they are preachers or Christian leaders or whatever. And as one of those people, I get so angry when folks do just dumb, stupid stuff, because it makes it harder on the rest of us.
It also tarnishes the Christian image. I mean, it goes, against the gospel, the spreading of the gospel. When people see that, and Christians are just a bunch of hypocrites. They live a sinful lifestyle openly, and there's nothing to it. So, why would we want to be a part of that?
I don't think there's anything that shuts down like a witness more than hypocrisy, because it allows somebody they don't even have to engage with what you're saying at all, because you can say, well, they're not even living what they're claiming, type thing. It's like, there's no need to engage. It doesn't matter what your argument is. You can dismiss it out of hand.
So I think we've done ourselves a disservice as followers of Christ and in the church when we've tried to portray to society that we are perfect people.
Yes.
You know, I think that's really where the issue comes, because we know that we're not. And if we're not authentic about that, then we beg for people to scream hypocrite.
Yep.
You know, and it's not that followers of Christ have it together. In fact, I think most people who are followers of Christ would readily admit, I fall short every day, you know,
Yep.
but we don't publicly say that. I think we internalize that, but we don't publicly say that. So when someone who's on a pedestal has a major fall, then people outside the church are looking at it saying, see, y'all are no better than anybody else. You keep saying you are, but you're not.
And I think that's
further. I'll take it a step further and say, not only do we not publicize to our culture that we're flawed, but we don't even admit our own sins to our brothers and sisters in Christ. Too many Christians and too many churches have lost that level of accountability where we can speak to one another or speak into one another's lives in love and correction. We've lost that, and because we've lost that, we then can't convey to the broader culture that we realize that we're not, we don't have it all together, or we're not perfect.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to ask, is like, what would be, because there's obviously a difference between somebody who fails to live up to their own standards versus somebody who that's not somebody necessarily you would call a hypocrite. Somebody who says, like, you know, I have these standards that I want to meet, but I don't always meet them.
Right.
So how do we distinguish what a hypocrite is beyond just, you know, falling short of that? And because I'm sure, like, even somebody like Falwell probably at least pays lip service to the idea that, oh, we all have sinned, all have done something like that. But there's something different there that I think you were just now touching on a little bit. It was like, you know, we don't give anything beyond that. We will give lip service to it, but we don't actually give examples of how we fall short, or we don't want to admit that a specific situation to where we've done that or something.
Well, I don't think we always mean the same thing when we use the term hypocrite. I think there's different definitions of hypocrite out there. So sometimes when we speak of everybody being a hypocrite, I don't know, in my understanding of what a hypocrite is, I don't know that that's necessarily true. But I do hear that a lot in Christian circles. Well, we're all hypocrites because we all say one thing and we don't always follow through. Is that what a hypocrite is, though?
Yeah, I don't think that's what people get so upset about, is that specific definition of it. I think it's something else, like you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, you know, if we look at when, you know, when Jesus got mad and started calling names, it was to religious leaders, and he was calling them hypocrites. And then the reason for it is they portrayed themselves as the Holy of Holies. They had it all together. They never sinned, and they were building walls to basically keep people out. And I feel like that's what we're touching on here with Jerry Falwell. This incident is his conduct. You know, if he had come out, I think if he had come out and said, you know, I was wrong, I did wrong, I admit it. I'm a sinful person, as all Christians are. Like, if he was trying to be more accountable of that, and, you know, and said, you know, I'm going to repent and try to change, that type of thing. But I don't think he's ever done that. From my understanding, back when one of the previous scandals came up, he basically came out and said, I've never portrayed myself as a religious leader. That Liberty, like he tagged Liberty and the staff of Liberty in the tweet. And he said, I've never claimed to be a religious leader. That's a title you gave me. And, you know, I am a really good president. I have like all of these attendance numbers and all of these sports accolades and all this stuff for Liberty. He's like, this is what I've done for the college. So he was bragging about what he's done for the college as a person, but he was not acknowledging at all that he was a Christian leader. Basically, it's just like, don't call me that, because I'm not. And you know, it makes me wonder, is this man, like, is he actually saying, I'm not actually a Christian, guys? Like, I mean, maybe that's too far, but
yeah,
like, he got the position because it was willed to him. You know, I don't know that he actually chose this thing.
I'll put this on the same thing as you may not consider yourself a leader, but there are people that by their position,
Mhm.
they are a leader. And if you are the president of Liberty University, which is out there proclaiming to be the Christian flagship university,
Yep.
then that's a mantle that you're taking on. The other thing
Yep.
that I'll say is sometimes people are leaders because they are born with natural leadership tendencies and abilities.
Mhm.
Too bad. You know, I mean, that's just
Yeah,
kind of
his brother, I think, is it Joseph Falwell Jr. or not Jr. but Joseph Falwell, something like that. I think he is he is a minister, and that was what he was called to do. And I mean, I don't hear of scandals. I don't think I've heard of any scandals with him. Like he seems to stay out of the
if there
limelight.
was, they'd be in the news.
Oh,
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, well, that brings up a good point, Justin. Is it just Christian leaders that people point at and say are hypocrites? I mean,
Yeah, I don't think so.
Scripture does tell us that there's another level of accountability, right? And Jesus was really hard on leadership, you know,
Mhm.
the holy people,
the self-righteous.
the self-righteous,
The
Yeah.
self-righteous.
you know, and I think that's a key term. You know, I hear it all the time. I've got to get all my stuff together before I can come to church. I don't have the right clothing to come. I don't, you know, part of that is what the church has said in the past. But part of that is just a societal expectation, I think, too. But it
Right.
still brings up as the church, how do we deal with this idea, whether it is fair or not, this idea of our society that church is hypocritical? I mean, it's out there, whether it's true or not, that's the perception, and perception is reality.
Yeah, that's a hard image problem to solve. So I don't know. I do have so I have an article here that is it's
Of course
titled.
you do.
Yeah.
I always have something related. I always look for a way to segue into this to my articles, but so it's the decline and fall of Jerry Falwell, and it's by what's his name?
Justin Stacy.
David French. No, I did not write this article. David French, and he is a conservative political commentator, author, analyst. I think he was an attorney before that. But,
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to read some of this. If you know anything about American evangelical higher education, the shocking thing about the Board of Trustees' decision to place Liberty University President Jerry Falwell on an indefinite leave of absence isn't that it happened, but that it took so long. And no, I'm not naive. I know full well that evangelical educational institutions have often suffered from low integrity leadership. But the general rule has been clear: misdeeds must be done in secret for the leader to survive. He must conceal his sin. The instant his wrongdoing becomes open and notorious, the leader must leave. However, for Falwell, Falwell was blazing a new trail. He was living sin out loud, careening from controversy to controversy, even as his students and faculty lived under the traditional strict moral rules of Christian education. It's easy to get inoculated against outrageous public conduct in the age of Trump. But even by new standards, Falwell's public conduct was simply extraordinary for a Christian leader. He was placed on leave after briefly posting a picture with a woman he said it was his wife's assistant. Their pants unzipped. He appeared to be holding an alcoholic beverage, but he denied it. And then he conducted a truly bizarre post-interview promising to be a good boy as he slurred his words. I'd forgot about that, but yeah, he said it would be a good boy.
Be a good boy.
Yeah. But this is the tip of the iceberg of outrage and sometimes outright weirdness from Falwell. For several years, however, Liberty flipped the script. The president lived life with greater freedom than his students or his faculty. This message was distinctly unbiblical. That some Christian leaders can discard integrity provided their other qualifications, from family names to fundraising prowess, provided sufficient additional benefit. In this way, Falwell functioned as an uncanny evangelical mini-me to President Trump, and served as a symbol of the extent to which the spirit of this could leak into important evangelical institutions. Like Trump, Falwell inherited a portion of his father's empire. Like Trump, Falwell was roguish departure from the more dignified norms set by their predecessors. Like Trump, Falwell's scandals, outrages, and multiplied right alongside a measurable record of accomplishment. In fact, for a time, it seemed that, like Trump, Falwell prospered not in spite of his outrageous conduct, but because of his disregarded norms. As with many of Trump's most prominent evangelical defenders, his gleeful defense of the president and his own imitations of the president's combative style gained him more power and more prominence. Compromise often carried with it an immediate benefit. I'll skip that. Yeah, I could read on for days here.
So,
but
was that an excerpt or was that an audiobook?
that was an audiobook. That was an audiobook.
It's pick on Stacy night.
Yeah, it always is. Yeah, we have to pick on each other. It's not any fun. So I actually saw that as soon as this happened, I saw a tweet from David French too. I'm glad you brought him up. That he said like this is good news and necessary. There's something to the effect of like there's a deep well of faith still at the university, and things like that can be distracting for people who actually come there to try to seek God. And there's obviously people that do, because it has, the name and recognition and stuff like that. And that can distract from what people perceive that mission. I'm sure there are plenty of students, plenty of faculty who saw kind of a tug between two different things. Like, are they trying to defend Falwell or are they trying to defend their faith? And this doesn't make them feel like they have to choose. So I think that's a good way to look at it as well, that this is a chance for rebuilding for them.
Yeah, I see it as a good shift for the evangelical community and as a whole. Like, now we're seeing that we're getting back to almost a normalcy with holding Christian leaders accountable. Because like this article says, in the age of Trump, it's almost like you could get away with a lot and for the sake of success or whatever. But I think this is a sticking point that, hey, we need to actually, keep our biblical roots and hold people accountable. So yeah, I have hope that, yeah.
Along those lines, my hope would be that the loudest voices condemning things like this, when we see it come out in the media, should be Christian voices. It shouldn't be the secular voice that's the loudest one heard. We need to be criticizing our own, if you will.
Yep.
Yeah,
I completely agree. I like the idea that you're holding leaders to a higher standard should also mean that you're holding Christians to a higher standard than, people who don't follow the same rules that you do.
Right.
Yeah. So something I was thinking of when we were talking before about what we as a church, what we as Christians can do. So one thing that I feel like at least the Catholic Church talks more about sin because you have confession, right? So
like Catholic guilt. We bring it on.
So yeah, but I feel like that can be a good thing. You're talking about the sin that you're doing, and it's like it's a requirement. You're confessing what you're doing. But the fact that, in the Protestant church, we can leave everything in the dark and just, take it to God, of course. But if we're not holding each other accountable because we don't even ever know, then we're missing something. We're missing something big, I think.
I love the Wesleyan tradition, which is what the Methodist Church is based on. Not that we do it much anymore, but the idea that you have a small accountability group that acts as your confessional space. It's a group of people who love you for who you are, but you're comfortable enough to say, listen, I'm really struggling with X, Y, and Z, and you have that accountability and they can speak into your life. We've really gotten away from that. And I think we've confused holding people accountable with judging them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Calling people out in a loving manner, that with love, speaking the truth with love, is really about accountability. You're not judging them. You're not saying you're going to hell or you're less of a person. And when it's coming from a place of love, what you're really doing is desiring better for that person in the way that we know that God hasn't created us to do.
Yeah.
And as Americans, we do this poorly. In other parts of the world, this is a big part of Christianity.
Yeah.
When it's not, you suck at this, or, you're a terrible human being. It's calling you an accountability and then supporting you where you need to be more holy,
Or like Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know. I wish we'd get back to it.
Something interesting it's related to this accountability is I'm getting ready to start a class. It's a 4-year program on it's education for ministry with Swanee, and so I was talking to Father Boyd's wife Kathy, and she's the mentor in it, and just about what it's about and everything. And she said that part of it is that we're in these groups. It's going to be completely online, Zoom, but we're in these groups, and they are going to be accountability groups. So not only are we learning with these people, but we're going to have sort of like AA sessions or something, like where we are confessing to things to each other, and it's going to be it stays with the group. It doesn't go anywhere else. And I was like, that is such a great idea. Like that is a really, faith building exercise to do. So I'm really looking forward to this class.
Yes.
Yep. All right. I guess we talked enough about Jerry Falwell Jr. So we will turn the reins over. We'll turn the reins over to Aaron, and you could maybe expand on this and teach us something.
Well, let me just, I'll speak to it a little bit. I don't know what you guys had in mind, but I know that it came up in conversation that a few weeks ago I'd done a sermon on the topic of hypocrisy. And I think that's kind of what sparked tonight's episode. And I won't recount that entire message, but I will kind of give you the Cliff's Notes version of that. And if it's something that you're interested in watching or hearing, Gray United Methodist Church has a podcast. You can find it there. In fact, we just started it this week, but you can find that sermon on there. You can also find it on our Facebook page or YouTube page too. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go and find that there. But we're making our way in at the Gray Church through the book of Acts. So kind of hitting the high points, if you will, but stumbled upon a story that I think really isn't told very much in churches. So we don't spend a lot of time on it, largely
because the names are really hard to pronounce.
I don't think that's the reason. They're hard for Brooke, but it's a story that I think we're almost embarrassed to tell. If you don't know the story, you can find it in the 5th chapter of Acts, but there's this crazy, bizarre story where a couple, Ananias and Sapphira, they're a husband and wife couple. They do what appears to be a really charitable thing, right? They go and they sell a piece of land that they own, and they bring some of the money from the sale of that land and they give it to the church. And they weren't the only ones doing that in those days, but they wanted to contribute, I guess. So they do that. And to make a long story short, the apostle calls Ananias forward and questions him about the amount of money that he had given. Did you give all the money from the sale of your land to the church? And he said that he did. And at the apostle's word, this man drops dead right there in the church. And some people come and they pick him up, they drag him out, and they bury him immediately. Unbeknownst to his wife, all this has gone down. And then she shows up at the church. And gosh darn it, if they don't ask her the same question, and she again lies just like he did. And he says, well, you're gonna die just like your husband did, and the same men that buried him are gonna bury you. And of course, that's exactly what happens in the story. And I think a lot of times we read that story and we think, what in the world is this about? Why is it in there? What's it meant to teach us? And I think when we just take the story alone, we don't get the full picture. If you back up back up a few verses into the end of the 4th chapter of Acts, and there's another short story there about another man named Joseph of Cyprus, or we know him better as Barnabas. And we're told that Barnabas's name was given to him by the apostles, and it means son of encouragement, or the encourager. And Barnabas, we're told, sold a piece of property and gave all of the proceeds to the church. And he's heralded there as being a man whose heart had been so melted by the gospel, by the Holy Spirit in him, that he gave so freely of himself and didn't give it a second thought. And I think what we have is Luke, who writes Acts, he means to contrast these two stories, right? We're supposed to see Ananias and Sapphira in contrast to Barnabas. Barnabas gave freely, he gave authentically, he gave because of what the Holy Spirit was doing in his life and shaping how the Holy Spirit was shaping his heart. Ananias and Sapphira, on the other hand, they did it because they wanted to look good in the eyes of the church, right? So it wasn't so much that they didn't give all the money of the sale of their land to the church. They were free to do that, and Peter says as much. It's that they lied about it. It's that they wanted to look just like Barnabas looked. They wanted to be held up on a pedestal in the church. And in my message, I talked about the deadliness of that kind of hypocrisy. And I talked about why Luke probably tells this bizarre story. And it's for that reason. He means to tell us that hypocrisy will kill us. And not only as an individual believer, but it'll kill the church. I think it's the number one danger to the church, because it's an attack not just from without, but it's an attack from within the body. And we damage not only our witness, but we damage the relationship that we have with our brothers and sisters when we practice hypocrisy. And we, the church, I don't care what flavor of church we're talking about, the Christian church, we have an image problem. And a lot of that comes down to the perception of hypocrisy. Now, I'll clarify that, though, to say that I think we mean different things, as I said earlier, when we use that term hypocrisy. If you really look at the root meaning of what a hypocrite's an actor. A hypocrite is somebody who acts like they're something that they're not. They're not authentic. They're playing a role, right? And that's what will destroy our own faith journey, and that's what destroys the church. So that, in a nutshell, is the deadliness of hypocrisy.
Wow,
That's good.
that was really good. Yeah.
Very good clip notes. Yeah.
Yeah,
May have to go back and find the link if Justin posts it.
I will definitely post the link in the descriptions. Thank you, Aaron. That was a great message.
Yeah, I've heard that story of Ananias. I was trying to pronounce it wrong on purpose. But
Yeah.
yeah. Ananias and Sapphira before, but I haven't heard it contrasted with the previous story of Barnabas. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, I definitely think Luke means for us to see those two up against one another.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think he does that theme a lot too, because he does the same in the early part of his gospel where he does with Mary and Zechariah too, and we'll put those back to back in the same response. Yeah, so I think you nailed that. I like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that goes back to the fact that we don't typically read enough of Scripture when we read. We'll take a few verses and try to a lot of preachers will just take one verse or two verses and do an entire sermon on it.
Is what that's called. Proof
Yeah.
texting.
And you're missing a lot by doing that, I feel like. That was great. So would you say, I guess, follow-up questions?
Yeah, sure.
Would you say that the true definition that we're trying to hit at here of what a hypocrite is being an actor, is this someone who is acting as a Christian but is faking it, or is it that they are acting as holy and they aren't. So what's the acting part?
Yeah, I would say it's probably both of those, depending on the context or depending on the person. I think it could be either one. I do think there are people that act as if they're a follower of Christ because it makes them look good, or it behooves them politically, or it helps their business, or whatever. You know, I do think we have those kind of actors in our churches. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure we do. But I also think that there's people that just feel like they can't be transparent, that they have to portray something, portray themselves as something that they're not, or more holy than they really are. At the end of the day, you know, that responsibility falls upon us as the individual believer not to do that. But the fact is we have a church culture, I think, that encourages that kind of behavior.
Yeah, I think we do. How do we navigate that? Like, so, when some of us detect that there is some hypocrisy going on with a leader, but you have, the majority of Christians who may be in your church, or at least, that is just completely behind them.
Mhm.
How that is such a tough thing to navigate. I struggle with it completely because I don't necessarily like confrontation. So sometimes I will make a sticking Facebook post to kind of rattle some cages, but
That's how you.
That'll teach them.
That's what you do.
that's what you do, because that's going to resolve so much. But the thing is the people that that I'm trying to rattle the cages of, they're not viewing my Facebook posts anymore.
They blocked you by now.
But yeah, so I just have I have a friends list of an echo chamber is what I have. So I don't know.
So I think, part of it is our society is just so polarized that we have forgotten how to have civil discourse. I think is part of it. But I think what it takes is I think it takes the person who realizes that maybe the leader that they've been following is being hypocritical. I think, it's on us to be authentic as well. I think I've shared with you the story before when our children's friends were shocked that we as pastors listened to anything but church music. That we knew secular songs
or watch movies
or whatever. I think they literally thought we sat around and sang hymns around the dining room table till we all went to bed. Which tells
that would be so boring.
It would be awful. So I think part of that, though, is been a fear on pastors and Christian leaders to be authentic because they were worried about their jobs. They were worried about their positions. So I think you're seeing a new wave of folks who are being pretty authentic. But I think it takes just the Joe Schmo Christian, if you will, the average Christian has got to be willing to be authentic.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. Like, I like that, what you and Aaron were both saying, like, that where that culture exists, it feels like you have to be, you perfect type thing. And you can't talk about like where you fall short or where you struggle with or something like that. That when it comes up to somebody like the scenario Justin's talking about, a leader, well, no, they can't, they have to be perfect because they're a leader, and that's the culture that exists and all this other stuff. And so that just kind of expounds upon itself to where like people don't are unwilling to believe that type of thing because that can't exist. So because of that culture, it makes it even harder to address those situations.
But I think Brooke's on to something. I don't think we change this from the top down. I think it's grassroots, right? It's individuals and small faith communities taking this accountability and being faithful seriously.
It does seem like there's been a push, like you said, Brooke, like that recently, of kind of like these accountability groups or small groups and things like that that kind of get more in that direction rather than just nameless congregation or something. But
yeah, and I think, if you look at church history through the years, there's been this push, and I think we're really starting to understand, especially coming from a society that considers itself to be Christian, that there's this kind of revival happening where people are realizing that Christian is not just a name and only, it's not just going to church on Christmas and Easter, but there's something more to it. And I think that the more authentic believers that you have and more authentic leaders that you have, that's a ground swelling movement that may sweep the church as we know it. I mean, we can pray for that.
Yep.
Yeah. So a while back, well, it's a few years ago probably now, but Russell Moore, y'all know Russell Moore? So he is he's with the Southern Baptist Conference Bowling, right?
He was the spokesperson
So he has
theological seminary, some theological seminary. I thought Southern Theological something.
But I think it's aligned with the Southern Baptist Conference.
It might be.
He stays in controversy with that church, because of the positions that he takes against basically Trump. And but one thing he said was when we see a lot of these, number one, we're seeing a lot more people classifying themselves as nuns in ES, nuns instead of Christians.
Right.
So he said that's actually a good thing. We are filtering out the people that were calling themselves Christians before, but weren't really. And they're bold enough, they're brave enough to now say, hey, we're actually not Christian. So take those people out. And then, a lot of the divisions I guess we're seeing in the church is we shouldn't see it as a bad thing. We should actually see it as we are filtering out the mess. And I was like, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I would love to have a unified church and everybody just be joyful and everything. But the fact that, division is not necessarily bad. It can be healing to go through that process. So yeah, I'll try to find that article and I'll post that. I'm going to have a lot of things I'm going to post.
Language that I use to describe what you're talking about is, I think in the Western church we're being pruned, right? And pruning isn't. It's not very pleasant to go through. So I think in the Western church we're going through a difficult time, but it's a time of pruning. And I think after that pruning, I think we're going to see remarkable growth, a revival, if you will. And I think those seeds are already planted, but we're not seeing the fruits of those yet.
Yep. Yeah. There's a famous article from Pope Benedict, then Joseph Ratzinger, about, I think it was actually called A Smaller Church, that's all about that whole idea. It's pretty much saying those exact same things. You can link that too.
Also, for me as a believer, that's really exciting. As someone who makes their living by the church, it's scary.
Yeah.
That you need income coming in, and you need so there's the economic aspect to church. So
unlike
that
a
is
lot
scary.
of church denominations or situations, Brooke and I are both full time in ministry. A lot of pastors are bivocational.
Right.
I spent a lot of money to go to seminary, hoping that I wouldn't have to be bivocational, but that might be the future of our church, and that's a hard pill for some of us to swallow.
And I wonder if that leads, if let's say United Methodist and the Episcopal Church, I think the United Methodists branched off from the Episcopal Church at some point, right? That's their history.
They're both now the Anglican tradition.
That's right.
Right. So
John Wesley was an Anglican. Yeah.
Yeah. So if both are struggling as a denomination, what we may end up seeing is more talks on unifying these churches to bring them together.
And that could be true. A lot of Christian unity could come out of.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, what if this is the way to bring the churches back? Boy, wouldn't that be crazy?
Yeah.
That's just a random thought, but
there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
That's deep.
Yeah. All right. I guess we will conclude our topic there, and we will go on to something a little more fun, and that is our top 5. So, segue. Appalachian Liturgy Top 5 Debate. To our top 5. Okay, this week we are going to be touching on the theme songs of sitcoms, and there was no requirements on what made a sitcom, even though I
Wow.
pushed for it.
Prefacing with that is about to mean that you're about to break out a.
I'm scared.
Well, I would prefer to go last.
Oh no.
So
Because he's broken the rules, I would assume.
I don't think I did.
Just a
but I
reminder,
will-
there's no rules, but I want to go last so you don't yell at me.
Just a reminder that we didn't agree on any rules
Yeah.
on this. But I had to make up rules in my head to get a five because I literally came up with like a list of 20 really quick, and I'm like, I don't know how to pick from these. So then I had to come up with some rules. So yeah, there's that. Who wants to go first?
I'll
Use your
go.
there you go. I was gonna say if nobody volunteers, use your authoritarian power to.
Okay, so I have no honorable mentions this week because
Oh.
the honorable mentions could have gone on forever.
Mm.
So these are my top 5. The theme song from the Jeffersons comes in at 5.
Oh wow! I
hit
can't
one of
believe I
mine
forgot it.
No, you already hit. You're gonna take my whole list.
Oh, I can't believe I forgot it.
So this one goes back a little bit, but the theme song from The Great American Hero,
Greatest.
Okay.
The Greatest American Hero,
Okay.
which at the church tonight, as soon as somebody mentioned it, like everybody broke out in song. So my third one is the Cheers theme
Oh
song.
my goodness! You're
Yep.
taking my whole list.
You're taking my list now too.
And my number 2 is the theme song from Friends.
Well, I
Oh,
may
that's
as
a
well
good
just quit talking.
one. You can leave now, Bully.
My number 1 is the theme song from Wonder Woman
From the 70s.
from the
Okay.
70s.
Oh wow! I don't know that I definitely didn't watch it, but I
I
don't.
watched it. I don't know if I could
Did you?
like sing it from memory or do it from memory.
Right.
Type thing, but
So
It's-
how did you come up with your list, Brooke? Did you have to come up with any requirements to get this down to 5?
It was songs or things that like stuck out in my head or that
Mhm.
other folks would be like, oh, and the song that you couldn't get out of your head. And
Yep.
that pops up in, just conversation all the time. Like, I mean,
that was a part of my
Cheers
take.
theme
Yeah.
song pops up all the time when you're talking. And so does the Friends, and I think everybody knows the Jeffersons, even if they
Mhm.
don't know the Jeffersons, the moving on up.
Everybody's
so
heard that part. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so yeah.
You gonna
So
sing any of the others?
no, I don't sing. At least for other people to hear. So that's kind
I'll
of
sing some of mine. I don't mind singing.
No, you sing good though.
Yeah, that's the problem.
You sing good.
Mine barely classifies as singing.
Right. Yeah. Mine's a joyful noise.
Didn't say
Only
it had
to
to
go-
sound good.
Only to God, I'm sure.
Right. Exactly. That's the point. That's the point. That's the point. So I was trying to find the Wonder Woman theme song.
All right. Well, while you're doing that, I'll basically repeat most of your list here.
Don't play it. We'll get hit with a copyright.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I can't play it.
Yeah.
For 5, I had the Scrubs theme song.
Oh.
Scrubs. Yeah, I didn't watch it, nor do
never
I know
watched
what
Scrubs?
that sounds like. No.
Oh.
No.
So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna listen to the theme song now.
Yeah.
Make myself
There you go.
4, Jeffersons again. The
Yep.
only other difference I have between our lists now is at number 3, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh no! Why didn't I think of that? Oh my gosh.
And then the
You
top
know they're
off.
rebooting that, right?
Are they really?
Yeah.
Yes.
I see
I
that.
did
Of
not
course
know
they
that.
are.
I'm kind of
course they are.
disappointed, and I don't want to know that now.
I wonder if Will Smith will be like the father or
If
the
he'll be
uncle
Uncle
or
Phil or
something. In
something?
this. Yeah.
Oh, I thought of an honorable mention. Go ahead. I'm gonna write it down.
I am going to throw some honorable mentions in, so I have some more unique because my 2 and 1 are Friends and Cheers, respectively. But yeah,
Okay.
my thoughts were like it had to be something that kind of came up not just for me, so that's why I left out my number 6 because one of my favorite ones was Psych. That theme song is one that really gets stuck in your head.
Yes.
But I feel like I know
Yeah,
like
they're
one
good
other
shows.
person that ever watched the show, so it's kind of hard for that to be like a really pop culture thing.
Yeah,
We have a
I
pineapple
didn't
on our
watch it.
table.
Yep, always pineapples. Yes. And then I had to throw in Adam's Family and All in the Family as honorable mentions, just because those, just so well known. But that's
My
it for me.
honorable mention is Saved by the Bell.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh, that is a
That's
good
good.
one too. See
Gilligan's
this?
Island?
What did you even
That's-
put then?
Yeah, what did I put?
I
That's
think
the $1 million question, isn't it?
20.
Okay. Okay. So here is how I came up with my
Oh no.
top list. It was basically what songs stay in my head, but not only stay in my head, but do I sing
I'm scared.
religiously, and in front of my wife, and then she'll, to the point where she's slapping me, telling me to shut up because it's so annoying.
So your
That's
category is it's addicting to you, but your wife hates it.
So annoying. Yeah, that is basically the way I came up with these 5.
I like it.
Okay, so my number 5. What would you do if
That's a
I
good one.
sing out of tune? So Wonder Years.
Yep.
And that wasn't a favorite. I watched it quite a bit when I was a kid, but it wasn't a favorite of mine. It wasn't a favorite show of mine. But that song I love.
Yeah. Winnie
So-
Cooper was my first TV crush. So
One of mine. I think either her or Amy Jo Johnson,
oh yeah, Pink Ranger.
or Topanga from Boy Meets World. They were all. I was going to marry all of them.
You're going to be Mormon?
You have to say wrong denomination for that.
What was your number 4?
Okay, my number 4 was Cheers, which you all both have mentioned. I don't think I ever seen a single episode of Cheers. My mom
Really?
used to watch it though, so I obviously heard the theme song, and I sing the song all the time now. It
Let's
is
just died.
it is a great song. My number 3 is Adam's Family.
Okay.
Adam's Family. I was more familiar with the movies. I don't know that I watched maybe just a few of the old sitcom episodes, but the theme song was relatively the same through the movies and the sitcom.
Because it was so iconic, you couldn't change it.
Right. And so in high school, this is a fun story. When I first learned how to play guitar, Mom got one of those old school voicemail recorders, the manual kind. So as soon as she got one of those, I got my guitar and I made up a theme song of the Addams Family using the Addams Family theme of the Stacy family. And so it was my voice, and I forget how it went, but it's like I don't know. I can't
Is
even
there
think
going
how.
to be a link to that too?
Yeah.
I wish I had it. I'm going to ask her if she still has that old machine. I would love to get that off of there.
That's pretty
and
cool.
I will post it. It will be all over Facebook. It will go viral. So that was my number 3. My number 2, Golden Girls.
That's fine. It's fair enough.
Yeah, and that is a show that I did watch pretty religiously with my mom. And if it find it on, I still watch it. Like it is a really good show. Like there is some great messages in it. Honestly, like it was ahead of its time. I feel like Sophia was hilarious. She was my favorite character in that.
Picture it.
Picture, yeah. Okay, so my number 1. This is the song that I sung just today in the vehicle when I was going over my top 5, and I started singing this song. Green Acres is a place to be.
Yes.
Farm living is the life for me.
Yeah, that's an addicting one. If that's
Oh,
your
it's so
criteria, I
addicting.
do think that you probably nailed it there.
It's so addicting. And
Yeah.
I loved that show. That was probably my mom and my favorite show to watch together. Yes, was
So
Green
just
Acres.
so you know, it shows all the time over the air on.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Me TV. I
Me
think that is,
TV.
yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
I was watching that today because I had no other TV since I had no internet.
Welcome to my life.
So I did have honorable mentions. Like I could have went on for days, but I just threw a few in here. Andy Griffith theme.
Yeah,
There's
I
no
thought about that one.
words. There's no words, so it's not as addictive. But It's very memorable. The
Like-
Sanford and Son theme,
Mhm.
That's the
um,
one.
Gilligan's Island, as you mentioned, and Happy Days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's so
So-
many good ones.
I like that every one of these is like before the year 2000 type thing. It's like they don't do theme songs.
Yeah.
Like,
Quit
that-
whipping
no.
'em.
the Office theme song is pretty good, but it's not anywhere near the quality of these.
I think that's how Psych and Scrubs got on my list because I was trying so hard to think of a semi-modern
Yeah.
one, and that was the closest. I could get.
Friends went to the early 2000s, so you
Did
can
it?
almost
Okay.
say that that's semi-modern. The X-Files theme is another one.
I
just
thought of the X-Files, but I didn't. I left it out for the same reason you said.
Oh.
Andy Griffith, no words.
The Munsters and the Batman, the 60s Batman.
No, 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 no.
All right, so we're going to have to come up with a
Oh, boy.
final list
Yeah.
here. So I guess Cheers.
Cheers was on.
We all
That's easy.
had Cheers. What others did you all match on?
Friends.
And the Jefferson.
Friends
Mhm.
and Jeffersons. Okay, so we'll count those three. What about from my list? Which ones are your all's favorite?
Adam's Family.
You can throw
Addams
Addams Family. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
That fifth spot though.
Green Acres? Wonder Years?
I mean, no matter which one we choose,
What about Golden Girls?
something valid is going to be left out.
I think Golden Girls has to take it.
Golden Girls?
I won't complain. I won't complain.
Okay.
Although I will complain that Fresh Prince got left out, but I won't complain.
That is such a
That's such a tragedy, honestly.
But whatever gets something tragic is going to get left out. So I don't think there's any way to win on a top five and be totally happy.
This was a really good category. I think
Yeah, that was tough.
bowling. You came up with it, right? That was good stuff.
I think Brooke had mentioned that they had been watching old sitcoms, and so I was like, "Oh, that would be a good
Yeah,
top five."
That would be a good one.
I'm tired of watching old sitcoms, y'all.
It's time to get back to the good Netflix and Hulu, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Well done.
All right. Well, that will conclude us. So thanks, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Aaron, for once again joining us.
Yeah, thanks,
and
Aaron.
Giving us a good message.
It was really good.
And so peace be to everyone, and have a good night.
Thanks.